They walked from the verdant valleys to the lush forests, from rugged mountains to open plains. Along the way, the trees became shorter and the mountains became smaller. Standing at a high point, they could see far, far away. Wow, the human world is so big, it can fit dozens, no, hundreds of elf valleys, exclaimed Turnip excitedly. He used to think that the human world was just a small area outside the elf wall. They rarely rested along the way, avoiding crowds and taking secluded paths. If they accidentally encountered humans, they would quietly hide and wait until the humans had gone far away before coming out again. During the day, they followed the sun as it moved eastward, and at night they relied on the brightest stars to guide them. They didn't know how far they had walked, but the scent of the wind gradually changed. Old Pumpkin smelled the scent of the sea, salty. The salty kingdom of humans is right beneath our feet. The elves widened their eyes and climbed to high places to observe. They saw the vast human cities, with buildings stretching as far as the eye could see, extending from their feet to the horizon. Seabirds circled above the city, occasionally emitting squawking sounds. The streets crisscrossed like fishing nets, filled with small and dense humans, resembling ants. Except for Old Pumpkin, the elves were all somewhat afraid. They had never seen such a large city or so many people before. Little Green asked in confusion, "Why did we come to the Salty Kingdom?" Old Pumpkin answered, "Among the various kingdoms, the powerful Salty Kingdom loves peace and can rival the Spicy Kingdom. For us elves, this is the safest country. One day you will overcome greed, harmonize the 5 flavors, and lead humans back to the taste memories of the pastoral era," said Old Pumpkin to the baby. Ahead was the territory of the Salty Kingdom, with tall and long city walls resembling a sturdy seawall. Its base was made of deep brown stones salvaged from the depths of the sea, and it was adorned with colorful corals in the center. The pointed white towers on both sides were where soldiers stood guard. The city gate was adorned with many magnificent flags, embroidered with the large character, Salty. Old Pumpkin recognized the human characters. On the fish-shaped plaque in the middle, it said, "Arched Sea Gate." The gate was guarded by 5 soldiers, dressed in blue and white armor and wielding weapons that resembled sharp fishhooks. Every person entering the city had to undergo careful inspection. "Gurgle! Gurgle! How can we enter the city?" Fat Wintermelon racked his brain but couldn't come up with a good solution. Old Pumpkin said, "Become humans." "Humans, gurgle, gurgle, how do we transform?" Fat Wintermelon shook his heavy head. "Oh, that's easy." Turnip jumped out and said, "2 hands, 2 legs, 1 head." Turnip turned into a human, but Fat Wintermelon felt that something was off. Your head." It turned out that Turnip's back still looked like a cabbage. Old Pumpkin demonstrated. His body began to swell, stretching the pumpkin skin, and transformed into human hands and feet. His pumpkin hat turned into a human top hat, and eyebrows, eyes, and mouth gradually protruded, with a few tufts of a small mustache at the corners of his mouth. Grandma Flower shook off the dust on her body, her neck shrank, and she transformed into a kind old grandmother, smiling warmly, her face covered with deep wrinkles. Her red and purple dress also turned into a human dress. "I gurgle, gurgle, change, change, change." The fat winter melon turned into an uncle, but his big belly just wouldn't fit in, making his clothes look round and bulgy. Little Green and Turnip transformed, and seeing each other's funny looks couldn't help but burst into laughter. "You forgot to change your ears! You forgot to change your nose!" The baby stared at them with wide eyes, moving his hands and feet joyfully and giggling. Turnip turned into a little boy, but was very impatient. He took 2 big steps and almost revealed his true form when he stumbled over a stone. Little Green, who transformed into a human girl, walked proudly and slowly behind him. Her green cloth dress made it difficult to walk. They tried to walk like humans, putting one foot in front of the other alternately, but their posture was strange and clumsy, just like stiff marionettes. A soldier quickly noticed them and came over to inspect them. Turnip was so nervous he dared not breathe, and Little Green, suddenly panicking, pointed at his ankle. Turnip looked down to see his shoes had turned into green vegetable stems, breaking into a cold sweat. Little Green pretended as if nothing was wrong and walked past, covering Turnip's feet with her long dress. Another soldier sniffed the air vigorously, not having smelled such fresh vegetable aroma for a long time, as if he had walked into a wilderness full of life. His companion nudged his shoulder, bringing him back to reality, and his gaze shifted to the baby in Grandma Flower's arms, who was quietly closing his eyes. "All clear. Move along!" The soldier waved a blue flag. The elves walked through the arched city gate into the kingdom of Saltland. Salty joy. Even though they had seen the city from the hillside, the scene before them was still astonishing. Humans were everywhere, wearing strange clothes and using tools the sprites couldn't name. The houses along the streets were packed tightly together, some like seashells, some like snails, and others like fish. In the distance, there was a huge salt market, and the salty taste flew in the wind, dominating the entire city's atmosphere. No doubt, this was the realm of saltiness. "Too salty!" Turnip couldn't help coughing. The road reflected white light, and Fat Winter Melon squatted down, touched the stone slab with his finger, and licked it. "Gurgle, gurgle, it's salty!" It turned out that the roads of Saltland were made of semicircular salt crystal bricks, arranged like fish scales, making the whole royal city seem like it was built on the back of a super-huge fish. The elves walked on the fish-patterned salt crystal road, noticing that every house had fish wind chimes under the eaves, used to dispel disasters and bring blessings. When the sea breeze blew, the chimes made a pleasant sound. "How lovely!" Little Green admired the fish chimes. Soon they arrived at the central square of Salty Joy City. There hung a giant fish clock, which made the loudest sound, reaching miles away, striking on the hour every day, informing all the city's inhabitants of the time. When the fish clock struck at noon, it was time to cook. People put down their work, throwing the freshest ingredients into their pots, while the wood in the stoves crackled fiercely. The sea breeze brought delicious aromas wafting through. During meals, the people of Saltland would sprinkle a pinch of salt on the dining table as a gesture of gratitude to their ancestors. The deep sound of the fish clock resonated, and the baby, smelling the aroma, cried out hungrily. "This will be your home," Old Pumpkin said kindly, putting a small piece of pumpkin into the baby's mouth. Turnip couldn't help but ask, "Old Pumpkin, where are we going?" "You'll know soon." Old Pumpkin's voice had barely faded when a beautiful carriage approached them. The coachman, dressed in Saltland's traditional attire and wearing a tall hat, respectfully said, "Honored guests, please get on." The elves followed Old Pumpkin onto the carriage, looking at each other, wondering what would happen next. If we want to live in Saltland, we need someone's help. The person meeting us is the King of Saltland, Old Pumpkin stated. The Salt King? Their eyes widened in surprise. Is this the king's carriage? Amazing! Turnip exclaimed in shock. Old Pumpkin, using a secret language that humans couldn't hear, said sternly, "Remember, you must never reveal the secret of the divine child to anyone. It's our top secret." Not even to the king? Interesting, said Little Green. The horse galloped swiftly and soon arrived at the palace of the Kingdom of Salt. The palace was built on the water, surrounded by the sea, resembling a giant transparent fish tank. As the elves entered the palace, it felt like walking underwater, with sea stars, sea urchins, and various beautiful seaweeds at their feet. Glowing fish and colorful jellyfish swam above and around them. After what felt like a long journey, they saw an old man sitting in the center of the palace. His beard was light blue, and he held a book made of shells. Elf Chronicles. The book recorded the marvelous buildings the elves could construct. The guards announced, "Your Majesty, your guests have arrived." The King of Salt Kingdom looked up, curious as he gazed at Old Pumpkin and the others. Are you elves?" He stepped down from his throne, his bulky robes making him look like a fat jellyfish. Putting on his reading glasses, he carefully examined them. "You look just like humans." We don't look like humans at all, Achika." Turnip instantly returned to his elven form. He became much shorter, with pointed ears sticking out from behind, draped in a cloak of lettuce leaves. The king nodded in satisfaction. So it is indeed the elves who have arrived, looking exactly as described in the books. The other elves also reverted to their original forms, making the king even happier. He glanced at Old Pumpkin's hat and Little Green's bow and arrow, and then patted Fat Winter Melon's belly. Fat Winter Melon couldn't help but laugh heartily, which amused the king. "The elves are in trouble and seek your help to stay temporarily in the Kingdom of Salt," Old Pumpkin said calmly. "If I let it be known that I've sheltered you, perhaps—" King stroked his blue beard, feeling hesitant. Old Pumpkin stood tall. Long ago, the elves guided the way for the people of Salt to reach the eastern coast, where life flourished. The ancestors of Salt once promised the elves that in times of trouble, they could seek help from the king. It was all ancient history, and the king thought the elves had long disappeared. He reluctantly said, "Indeed, this is the agreement between Salt and the elves." He noticed the baby in the elf's arms and asked with suspicion, "Who is this baby?" Granny Flower spoke up. "He is an abandoned baby of your country. Look at his eyes. They are just like those of the children of Salt." King bent down to observe carefully, and indeed saw the familiar blue eyes of his people. He waved his hand. "Very well, I agree to your request, but you must hide yourselves well. I have one condition. You must build the finest tavern in all the land for the Kingdom of Salt." After leaving the palace, Turnip exclaimed happily, "With Old Pumpkin here, isn't this simple? Achika!" Using an elven gem, Old Pumpkin exchanged for a failing tavern. The elves each cast their spells, shaping the wood into various forms. In no time, the tavern transformed, resembling a giant starfish. The 5 sides of the starfish formed long corridors for transporting goods. The floors stacked up, totaling 8, resembling a tall tower. Old Pumpkin built a dragon-shaped water wheel in the courtyard, powered by seawater, delivering food to each floor. Little Green conjured butter lamps that changed color with the weather. Red on sunny days, blue on cloudy days, green in the rain, and yellow in the snow. When sea fog rolled in, the tavern looked like an island in a rainbow. Turnip and Fat Winter Melon imitated the people of Salt, hanging fish bells under the eaves of each floor. The tavern now not only had a psychedelic appearance but also pleasant music. Granny Flower quietly built an underground passage as an emergency exit. Old Pumpkin praised her thoughtfulness. "It's wonderful! We have a home!" The elves cheered joyfully, but couldn't shake off the sadness about the destroyed Elf Valley. Old Pumpkin raised his scepter and wrote 3 big characters on the tavern. Sea View Pavilion. He cast a powerful elven barrier, concealing them from the sensing of Pepper Country's priestess, to evade the search by King Spicy. From today onwards, no elf is allowed to leave Seaview Pavilion without my permission. Old Pumpkin looked at the beautiful baby lovingly. Since he has a human body, he should have a human name. He named the baby Skadi, a word he learned from ancient elven books. The word represented peace and joy, where all life could share in the feast in a world without war. It was Old Pumpkin's blessing for the son of the gods and his hope for the world of taste. Granny Flower lovingly said, "Little one, you finally have a name. Let's call you Skadi." "Skady, gurgle gurgle, sounds so nice." Fat Winter Melon scratched his head and chuckled. Turnip and Little Green surrounded Skadi, cheerfully calling out his name. Skadi seemed to understand, blinking his blue eyes, and soon fell asleep. Suddenly his 2 eyes snapped open, turning red, and what was more terrifying was that something was colliding inside them. One force was blue, and the other was red. The 2 forces fought fiercely like a pair of fire dragons, one biting the other's neck, and one biting the other's tail. Skady cried loudly, feeling very uncomfortable, and the fish bell jingled. Although his eyes were open, it was as if he had fallen into a nightmare. Turnip couldn't help but shout, "Old Pumpkin, look, what's going on? Archica!" Old Pumpkin was greatly surprised. "This is the dark power of the gluttonous god. Greed is controlling him. I will fight the dark power." Little Green clenched her bow and arrow, ready to battle the unseen enemy. Old Pumpkin shook his head. He hadn't expected the dark power to appear so soon. If the bad guys knew that the dark power was still in this child, the consequences would be unimaginable. Inside Skadi's red eyes, the collision became more and more intense. "Bang, bang, bang," Pumpkin commanded loudly. The elves hurriedly cast spells, gathering spiritual power onto Old Pumpkin. Old Pumpkin raised his wand, aimed at Skadi's forehead, and a dazzling white light pierced into Skadi's small body. "Bruma, Archikaka," they chanted the spell, silently praying. "We must win, Archie!" Turnip shouted, almost crying. "Come back, son of the god, lost little one!" Granny Flower's voice was hoarse as she performed a magical soul-calming technique. Old Pumpkin opened the pathway to Skady's dreams, clearly seeing his dream. Skady turned into a little beast, covered in fur, looking very much like his father. He was stimulated, staring with big, frightened eyes, involuntarily destroying everything around him. He burrowed into the fields, using his long tongue to sweep all the food into his stomach, and large areas of rice fields fell around him, leaving chaos in the fields. The power of several elves gradually merged into a strong white light surrounding the little beast. The little beast made woeful cries, its body becoming smaller and gradually calming down. Scotty's eyes returned to normal. He was covered in sweat, exhaustedly falling asleep. The elves were out of breath. Old Pumpkin said worriedly, "The sealed energy only lasts for 11 years, and no one knows what will happen after 11 years. To defeat the beast of greed, he must rely on himself." Thinking about the nightmare that would accompany Skady for a long time, Granny Flower couldn't help but frown. Ah, this poor child! Under the care of the elves, young Skady grew up quickly. In the blink of an eye, he began to babble, play with the turnip in the kitchen, and wobble as he learned to walk like Old Pumpkin. As he grew older, he became a complete mischief maker. He tore Turnip's green cloak, used Little Green's short arrows to catch fish, hid Old Pumpkin's wand, and stole the pastries made by Fat Winter Melon. "What a headache of a child," Granny Flower said with a smile. Even her reprimand was very gentle. She was knitting a purple sweater, a craft she had just learned from humans. As long as Skady was there, the watchtower was filled with laughter and joy. The elves carefully hid their identities, and Skady also had a little secret that he told no one. He often had nightmares, dreaming of being in different places, devouring everything he saw, but the more he ate, the hungrier he became. His stomach was like a bottomless pit. Strangely, after every nightmare, he could see a little monster. It had a thin body, eyes on the sides, 4 legs and a tail, looking like a little bug made of white mist. Sometimes it hid behind a pillar, winking at Skady. Sometimes it appeared in the hallway, wagging its tail. Sometimes it climbed to the roof, snoring loudly in its sleep. The monster never spoke to him, but Skady could hear its voice, weakly saying, "This is not your world." The monster jumped in front of Skady, leading him forward. Passing through the corridor, walking past the dragon-shaped water wheel, the monster pointed at the great door of the watchtower, and Skady quickly shook his head. "Without Old Pumpkin's permission, I can't go out." When Skady said this, the monster stopped paying attention to him and suddenly disappeared. It disappeared for a long time. Skady missed it a bit, but it didn't show up for a long time. Before long, the watchtower became the first tavern of the Salt Country, and the elves slowly adapted to human life. Old Pumpkin was the steward, Turnip was in charge of procurement, Little Green was a waitress, and Fat Winter Melon, obsessed with human cuisine, became the head chef. In the world of taste, the chef is the most respected profession. The watchtower was bustling every day. The dragon-shaped water wheel never ran out of food to transport, and the rooms were always filled with happy laughter. After eating the food made by Fat Winter Melon, people patted their stomachs and left satisfied. Skady loved this 8-story high tower shaped like a sea star, with its long corridors and stairs that seemed to never end. His favorite was the magical kitchen, filled with ingredients from all over, each with its cabinet. The cabinets were made of different shells, each shell a drawer, scallop drawers for sea ingredients, arc shell drawers for land ingredients, and many more, too numerous to count. Fat Winter Melon meticulously categorized them, storing only the freshest ingredients of the season. Opening the cabinets required matching the claws of two large crabs, no easy task. Scotty often got pinched by the crab claws, but this did not diminish his curiosity at all. What's inside the cabinet? There must be treasures! To Scotty, the high cabinets seemed like gateways to a magical realm. As a child, he would stand under the cabinets and guess the ingredients inside by their smell. Cooking was a mysterious magic to Scotty. Pots of thick soup, knives of various sizes, and utensils with a sea breeze scent all seemed incredible to him. He watched Fat Winter Melon make dishes and carefully arrange patterns on seashells, and the seashells were transported upstairs by the flowing water wheel, and then served to guests by Sister Green. Scotty secretly watched from behind the columns, seeing people put food into their mouths and smile happily. What beautiful smiles! I also want to make food that makes people happy, Scotty thought as the seed of a dream sprouted in his heart. Can you teach me to cook? Winter Melon patted his chest. Guruloo, Guruloo, no problem. But to become an excellent master chef, you'll have to go through a lot of hardships. I'm not afraid. If you can't keep going, just Guruloo, Guruloo and say you give up. Fat Winter Melon slyly smiled. I will never give up. Whoever backs out is a puppy, Scotty said angrily. Good. Guruloo, Guruloo, no backing out. They hooked fingers. Scotty promise, never change for 100 years. And so the devilish training began. When spring arrived, Scotty had to blindfold his eyes and identify 120 ingredients by smell alone, also naming their origins and how they are prepared. In the summer, when cicadas sang, Scotty had to carry a bucket of water weighing tens of pounds up and down the watching sea tower 10 times, then knead the dough vigorously. As soon as autumn leaves hit the ground, 49 different knives were laid out in front of Scotty. Each one he had to master perfectly. By winter, before the snow had even melted, Scotty began learning frying, deep frying, boiling and stir-frying. The oil fumes turned him into a little sooty face, making him cough constantly. Old Pumpkin also brought Scotty human cooking books, but Scotty found the content dry and boring, much less interesting compared to Fat Winter Melon's kitchen. I want to become the world's #1 master chef. At 10, Scotty proudly told Fat Winter Melon, then you have to challenge other chefs and guru to win medals. Medals? What are those? Scotty blinked his big eyes. They are awarded by the Gourmet Appreciation Society. Only with a medal are you recognized as a master chef. Little appeared out of nowhere, watching Scotty warily. Scotty, why are you asking about this? Are you up to mischief again? No, no. Scotty waved his hands. Just asking. You better not have any tricks up your sleeve, or I won't let you off. Little Green warned him, then walked away majestically with a tray. When Little Green was out of sight, Scotty quietly said to Fat Winter Melon, but I've never competed against other masters. He couldn't help feeling a bit down. Master, why doesn't Old Pumpkin let me leave watching Sea Tower? You'll guruloo understand when you're older. Scotty was tired of hearing this. Why do adults always say, you'll understand when you're older? Why can't they tell them now? Winter Melon. Master, please beg Old Pumpkin for me. I just want to go out once, Scotty pleaded. No, Old Pumpkin will gurulu be angry. I'm already grown up. I'll be 11 soon, Skadi said angrily. I hate it here. I hate you all. He cried and ran out. One day he will go out. He has grown up. The elves all thought, hoping that day would come later. I hope he can understand our painstaking efforts. The gemstone on Old Pumpkin's scepter flashed. He had an ominous premonition. Perhaps it was time to tell Skadi the truth, yet he didn't want Skadi to grow up with hatred. Skadi sat on the rooftop, sobbing. The salty sea breeze stung his face, and he saw a vast salt field not far from the shore, divided into small squares. People led seawater into the fields, waiting for the sun to evaporate the water and leave behind the white salt, which was then transported to faraway places unknown to him. He also saw the giant fish clock in the central square, the majestic palace, the bustling and wide streets, and smelled the salty scent from the chimneys. Skadi's ears itched, and a white little creature crawled out from his ear. It was that little monster, Skadi asked in surprise. Long time no see. Do you live in my ear? The little monster nodded, seemingly laughing. Who are you? Why do you always follow me? Skadi held it in his hand, noticing it had grown a lot, now resembling a small kitten. The little monster didn't speak, just stared at him. Oh, I forgot. You're a mute. The little monster's eyes stood up, looking very angry. You're the mute. Who's talking? Skadi looked around, but no one was there. Idiot, of course it's me talking. Skadi looked at the little creature he had flipped upside down. Is it you? But where is your mouth? Put me down, you brute! Skadi, startled, let go. You really can talk. It's me. I was sealed in your dreams. In my dreams? Then how did you crawl out of my ear? When people dream, a passage opens between the brain and the ears. It took me a long time to find it. You cannot tell anyone, or I'll be locked up again. Don't worry, we're friends, and friends keep secrets. Who locked you up? I don't remember. The little monster shook its head. I've lost my power, now very weak. Can you help me return to my original form? I promise you, once the seal is broken, I won't live in your ear anymore. Skadi thought for a moment and said, How can I help you? Very simple. The little monster jumped up excitedly. You just need to walk out of Watching Sea Tower and past the 2 stone lions at the entrance. But Old Pumpkin won't allow it. I'm like a prisoner here. Skadi suddenly felt troubled. Coward, the little monster said disdainfully. I'm not a coward. I want to become the world's #1 master chef. What will you use to prove it? Just you watch. I will prove my strength. Skadi clenched his fist. The little monster yawned disparagingly. What's your name? Greedy. The little monster lazily answered and crawled back into Skadi's ear. In the following days, Skadi had a cloud over his face. He fished alone, daydreamed alone, and didn't speak a word to anyone. Skadi, I just made gurulu fish soup. Try it. Fat Winter Melon came with delicious food, but he shook his head. Skadi, I will personally teach you how to shoot arrows. How about hunting seagulls? Little Green placed a bow and arrows in front of him, but he shook his head again. What's wrong with him? The elves looked at each other. worried about Skady. It was Old Pumpkin who understood Scottie's thoughts the best. He casually walked past Scotty. The Five Nations culinary competition is about to start soon, and this time it's hosted by the Salt Country. The most formidable master chefs will come to the royal city. Skady jumped up excitedly. The Five Nations culinary competition? Seeing Skady's enthusiasm, the elves competed to tell him more. Little Green was the first to speak. The origin of the Five Nations culinary competition is the Feast of the Food God. The Feast of the Food God. Why have I never heard of it? That was before you were born. Even I'm starting to forget, said Grandma Flower, her face showing longing. That was the pastoral era. Humans lived peacefully and happily, and the food god painstakingly blessed the creatures of the earth, and humans had a bountiful harvest almost every year, creating more and more delicious foods. Later, to thank the gods, humans held a grand food competition every 5 years, which was the Feast of the Food God. Scotty asked, "Why did the Feast of the Food God disappear?" Little Green said excitedly, "It's all because of those damned humans who sinned regicide." Regicide. A chill ran down Scotty's spine. The god inherently carried dark power. The evil among humans wanted to seize this dark power, so they besieged him on God Mountain, and the god died, Old Pumpkin said solemnly. But the prophecy says, the son of the god will descend to the human world, leading humans towards a new dawn. The son of the god. Where is he? Turnip was about to speak when Old Pumpkin coughed to interrupt. Old Pumpkin firmly said, "The son of the god needs to awaken, and the awakening depends on himself. When he awakens, it will be the time for the return of the food god." Skady, now with a new goal, seemed to find a light in his previously gloomy thoughts. The idea of competing in the Five Nations culinary competition not only excited him, but also reignited his dream of becoming the world's #1 master chef. However, the words of the little monster named Greedy echoed in his mind, urging him to venture beyond Watching Sea Tower, a step that seemed increasingly inevitable in his quest for culinary greatness and personal growth. Despite the restrictions placed by Old Pumpkin and the fear of the unknown, Skady's decision to break free from his confines and prove his worth was stronger than ever. The tales of the food god, the prophecy, and the prestigious competition all wove into Skady's destiny, leading him towards a path that would challenge him in ways he had never imagined.